Today, Zora and I spent a lazy day on the couch watching My Old Ass on Amazon Prime. Let's get into it. I'm Real Slim Katie 25, and I think this movie might have the most misleading marketing of all time. Like many of you, I'm chronically online, and I found out about this film because of a slew of TikTok ads. So, color me surprised when I find out that this premiered at Sundance back in January, got a limited theatrical release in September, and has just been out for months, and I didn't even know about it. This movie is marketed as almost a stoner coming of age comedy about a girl who talks with her older self. So I thought this movie would be exploring that, how that's happening, why that's happening, what do you do when you can talk to your older self. But this movie more focused on I'm telling a coming of age story with the lens of, oh, but also I have this piece of advice. And now, do I follow it? Do I not listen to it? How much do I learn about my future? But the actual older self aspect to me did not feel like the main plot of the movie. To me, the main plot of the movie felt like, oh, we're watching this teenage girl as she's getting ready to leave for college and come to terms with her adolescence coming to an end, which is totally not a bad thing. I love coming of age movies. It was very bittersweet, though, and I fully expected this to be a comedy. Based on the clips that they're showing online, I think, oh, this is just going to be a silly little comedy. But this movie made me very sad. Ultimately, this movie tackles a lot about the passage of time, coming to terms with when time comes to an end, you can't ever go back and experience those moments again. You can only really live in the present and not really linger too much about the future or the past. And how you can never really stop the passing of time, and how nobody can ever really stop the passage of time, which is a hard topic to deal with. Now, I think they handled this topic very poignantly. It was very refreshing. I enjoyed a lot of what they talked about in this movie. I did. I just didn't expect this to be more of a drama than a comedy, and I don't think I would have necessarily picked the movie because of that. And I don't think I necessarily would have picked this movie if I had thought it was more of a drama, because it's just not what I was in the mood for tonally. But as I've talked about before and we'll talk about again, just because a movie's not what you expect it to be doesn't make it bad. It just was different than what I expected. So I think watching some of these trailers kind of threw me off. As for the movie itself, I actually thought the performances were really fun. Maisy Stella, who I'm not very familiar with, I think this is her first leading role, did a delightful job. She was a perfectly annoying, insufferable teenager at the beginning and blossomed into this wonderful, I'm coming into myself, I'm realizing what my priorities are, delightful young woman. Now, do I think realistically 22 days is long enough for that change to happen? Certainly not, but I also don't think it's super realistic, so maybe I need to back out of the realm of full realism. Aubrey Plaza, as always, delivers a great performance. What I love so much about when she does comedy, and whatever she does, it's always very grounded and truthful, and despite how recognizable she is, I always feel like I'm getting information from her characters and not watching Aubrey Plaza. Also, super charming performance from Percy Hines White, who I wasn't familiar with before this movie, but was recently in the TV series Wednesday on Netflix with Jenna Ortega. Jenna Ortega was also starring with Maddie Ziegler, or Zegler, I don't know which one it is. I think it's Ziegler. Maddie Ziegler, the Dance Moms kid, in The Fallout, which was directed by Megan Park, who also directed this movie. So it's a nice little spiderweb of connections across the board. Along with being a coming of age story, this is also a fun queer finding yourself movie. I think a lot of people in culture expect to see women in particular, when they're having some kind of a queer awakening, that be that they are venturing away from these like heteronormative relationships. But it's super cool to see Elliot, who has a preference for women, discover that maybe she likes more, and coming to terms with that and grappling with that. I myself am pan, so I think it's really cool to see those kinds of stories on screen. And it was never really brought up in a way of like, oh, this is like groundbreaking, it's crazy. It just was kind of accepted, which was really cool. The first scene starts off really strong with a mushrooms tripping scene. Now, I don't think it'll go down in history for best mushroom tripping scene, but the second one comes pretty close to bad, if it can, with a hilarious gender bend performance of Justin Bieber's One Less Lonely Girl, which was charming and delightful. And one of the coolest things about this movie is that it takes place at a Canadian cranberry farm on a lake, which is delightful. And it's just one more movie that reminds me I'll never be rich enough to experience life at a lake, but that's okay. I'll live. I'm fine and happy. At the end of the day, I don't think this was a super groundbreaking movie. I thought it was a really fun afternoon watch with some really fun, quippy dialogue. At the end of the day, I thought it was a really fun, relaxing afternoon watch that turned out to be a little bit more serious and reflective than I thought was funny, but not in a bad way. Just in a, like, the summer I turned pretty meets no hard feelings type of way. I think that's a great comparison. If you like coming of age films, I think this is a delightful romp. I do not think this is going to be going absolutely nuts, a critically acclaimed film by any means, or something super memorable, but it was a delightful afternoon watch. No complaints here. My only gripe with the film is that it's like the log line on like Wikipedia and Rotten Tomatoes calls it like a science fiction film. And while yes, the concept of talking with an older version of yourself does live in the world of science fiction, this movie does not and does not treat it as such. So I do think that's super misleading. But whatever. C'est la vie, right? Anyways, I'm gonna leave you guys with this. And I guess this just goes to show that I'll watch any movie with ass in the title. Have a great day.